knowing that I didn't have much has really definitely made me appreciate the job that I have. And this is the one thing in my life, more than anything I've ever done, being a husband, being a father, being a friend, this is the one thing in life I think I was born to do. It comes so naturally.
Welcome to Flip Your Script, the podcast about life's critical turning points and how people find the inspiration and motivation to move forward and rewrite their unique stories. Flip Your Script is produced by Media Minefield, a public relations firm passionate about the power of sharing stories. Specializing in earned and social media, Media Minefield helps clients take control of their unique story and message. The show is hosted by Christy Peel, founder and CEO of Media Minefield, who flipped her script from an Emmy-winning journalist to a successful entrepreneur and speaker.
How does someone born to a teenage drug-addicted mother who spends years in foster homes and gangs become Missouri's Teacher of the Year? Darrion Cockrell, Mr. DC, is here to share his powerful story. Mr. DC, welcome to the Flip Your Script podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
You know, I've seen your story. I've read about it. You got a lot of press at the end of 2020, early 2021, as you received this honor. And the part that is in all the headlines is former gang member, now Missouri Teacher of the Year. And your story has so many other elements. Are you okay with how you've been portrayed?
I am 100% okay with it. I'm so glad that they put that, because when I did my speech for Teacher of the Year, I specifically put that in there, and I almost did it. But the main reason that I wanted to put that I was a former gang member, because there's so many kids in America who have lives just like me, or whose parents might have came from a situation like me. And I want them to know that despite your background, despite what you've gone through in life, that there is a way out. And although I used to be a gang member, there was a lot of growth, and I made it out of there, and I became somebody who my students think is amazing.
And so do their parents, because there's parts of your story on a resume. Parents might say, I don't know if I want him with my kids. And you're winning all sorts of awards for being with kids. And I heard when you did your speech, as you accepted that award, you said that you've lived a life on both ends of the spectrum. So let's start with the spectrum you were born into. And it wasn't a life with a lot of hope. Your father was murdered. You described it, people getting shot in the street, and that was your normal. What's that like for a child?
I mean, it's crazy. You know, I think now looking back, it's sad, it's crazy, it's unbelievable. But unfortunately, when I was living that, it didn't feel like that. It was normal. As you said, it was normal to me. Like all the other kids were experiencing the same thing that I did. Waking up to the same thing every day I was used to that. So it wasn't like, this is awful, because awful was normal in my circumstances, unfortunately. And I think that's the saddest thing about looking back at it, is because a lot of kids are still living that same way, and they might not even know that there is a way out of that. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and this should not be considered normal.
So if everything around you is difficult and that's your normal, people have to see hope. You have to see something that then says, okay, I want something different. What was that spark of hope for you that said, you know what, I can do more than end up shot on the street?
I think that spark of hope for me was when my grandmother signed me up for the DSEG program. Now, here in Missouri, the DSEG program is short for desegregation program. And it was a program which allowed kids in the inner city to travel out to the suburbs to go to school. Now, prior to doing that, my only engagement with people outside of my culture or race were some of the teachers that I had in the inner city school, but because they didn't really understand me or the people in my community, and they didn't really try to go out their way to make a connection, to support me, or do anything other than go to school to get that check, I really didn't have any kind of liking for white people. White people to me were just the police people who were like shooting and killing people and arresting people in my neighborhood, or the juvenile detention officers, or the social workers, or the judges that kept taking me away from my family. But when I signed up for that DSEG program, and that bus took me out to the suburbs, and I was around people, white people, who like actually cared about me, who supported me, who connected me and my family with the importance in making education a priority, I mean, that completely changed my life, because prior to that, other than my grandmother, who really wasn't around as much because she was trying to put a roof over our head, I didn't really have it. I didn't really know what love was. I didn't really know what support was. And I definitely didn't have any white people trying to help me find the success that was inside of me.
That is so interesting, because I think there are people, white people, who might say, well, all the people I see who are black are fill in the negative blank. And I never thought that if you're a black kid in a really rough situation, that white people aren't seen positively either, because all the people you're around aren't the best of the race. And you're defining a whole race or gender or whatever it might be based on not the best of it.
Absolutely. I mean, you are 100% correct. And I mean, as I've become older and I've learned more about like implicit biases and preconceived notions and things like that, I think a lot of times people forget that black people have those same thoughts towards white people. And a lot of times it's either some of those bad experiences we've had with like police or things like that, or just the stuff we see on TV. And if I'm watching something on TV and I see all these white kids in a happy place having a good time, obviously as a kid growing up who's living in poverty, I'm going to envy that. And I'm also going to think that like, man, these people don't understand me. They don't know what I'm going through. Like, I hate that they have all this stuff and I don't have anything. So I'm going to feel a certain way towards them. And that's not okay. But because of how I was raised and because of what I've seen and because of what I thought, that's how I felt.
Such a good point about how we as adults have to be really aware about the messages we're sending to children, because we're
Absolutely.
defining their normal. We're defining all sorts of things that we don't even realize we're doing, which gets us to what you're doing now. But I want to stay in your childhood for a minute. So you get put into foster care. Your grandmother takes you out so you see a different worldview. And then what I love about your story and what is so inspiring is it's like the power of a couple of people. A couple of people came into your life and completely changed, because you've said, had it not been for them, you would have gone down the path of all the people around you that you grew up with. So let's talk about some of those people and what they did for you. We know that you've seen hope as a child, but they really took you in, besides just, in a program, like really took you in.
So, the first person was definitely my sixth grade counselor, Mrs. Haneke. I know I talked about that, I seen hope, but they really helped me like really see it. They really helped me feel it. I mean, she just provided me with so much support, so much love. And I mean, this woman exhausted any and everything possible to help me find my way. I mean, this was a little white lady who would come down to the inner city. And I lived in the worst part of St. Louis. And she did not care about that. Only thing she cared about was me. So if she wanted to make sure that I got home safe, she did that. If she wanted to make sure that I had food, if she wanted to make sure that I had clothes, that was her priority. She made me a priority. And for me, that was something new. She knew that school was always a challenge for me. I had dyslexia. I had all kind of learning disabilities. I just had all these things stacked against me. But she also knew that I wanted to learn. I wanted to make education a priority. And the thing that she knew that I really loved was sports. So she used that to her advantage to make sports a deterrent to keep me into school, to keep me motivated. And she created a basketball team with me and other kids just like me to help understand that, okay, you can play sports, you can be good at it, but your priority is education. In order for you to play these sports, you need to focus on your grades. You need to focus on having a better respect and understanding of how this is going to allow you to progress in life. And it did. Like, I was working my butt off in class, even though it was a struggle, even though I had support systems, I was working my butt off just so I could play sports, not knowing that all of this hard work is going to pay off. My main focus was really sports, but I didn't realize all the stuff that I was learning, all the things that I was putting in my brain, all the stuff that's going to allow me to be more successful outside of sports. And even with that said, the thing that really sucked was that even though I had that great support system put in place at Parker Central Middle School, I still had to go back home to that environment. And I think that was the toughest thing, because I knew what my teacher was telling me. I knew what I had in that school out in the suburbs. But when you take that long hour trip back home, you get off that bus, in the back of your mind, actually in the forefront of your mind now is like, am I going to be able to eat when I walk in this house? Are my lights going to be on? My clothes are dirty. Am I going to be able to wash those? Am I going to see my mom today? Is my grandmother going to be home? Like, what is going on in my living situation. And because of that, I couldn't really prioritize education. I didn't come home and then go straight to my studies like normal kids should do or do. I came home and I'm like, okay, if I don't have food, how do I go and get food? Who do I need to rob? What do I need to steal? How do I get food in my belly? How do I get money on the table? And I think the only way I was going to break that cycle was getting out of that environment, because I had to open myself up to other things, and I had to get other stuff in my life that was going to allow me to see that there was more to life than what I was used to. And it all changed for me one day when I came to school, and my counselor was in front of the school, my social worker, and my principal. And my social worker had a huge duffel bag of my clothes. She said, "Darrion, you're not going home." Now I was like, "What do you mean I'm not going home?" She was like, "Well, we're putting you in the boys' home." And I was completely caught off guard. I had no idea what was going on. But after the fact, when I got a little bit older, my counselor explained to me that over the months or even the years that I had been talking to her, and this was in 7th grade. So I had known my counselor since middle school, since 6th grade. So over the year that I've known her and the months and things like that, I've been going to her about everything that was going on in my life. So all the bad things, all the good things, whatever was going on, I was crying to her, and I didn't know it, but she was going back and she was telling my social worker everything, as she should, as my counselor, because she knew that I needed support. And they both knew that in order for me to be successful, I had to be removed from that environment. And the state of Missouri's plan was to take away the 2 oldest, which was myself and my older brother. My older brother, who was in 8th grade at the time, had just been suspended for school he was kicked out of school for selling drugs. And they didn't want me going down that path. And they knew that I had a lot of potential, but being in that environment, being around those people, seeing those things, they didn't want me following into their footsteps. So the state's idea was, we're going to take both of these boys and we're going to put them in this military boot camp 4 hours away from where they live for 6 months. And this is going to get them going in life. I think they had good intentions. I think they were trying to do what they thought was best for me and my brother and my grandmother, to take some of that weight off her shoulders. But what the problem was, they were successful at doing it with my brother. They put him in that boot camp. But after that 6 months, he went back home to that same environment. And all that stuff that he learned was gone. And he went right back into the stuff that he knew, the stuff that he's seen every day. Fortunately for me, when they tried to put me in that boot camp, my principal, my teacher, and my counselor said, "No, we're not going to allow you guys to do that, because Darrion has a really good support system put into place here at Parker Central. If you take him out of this, all of that work that we put in will be for nothing. And he's going to have to start over. And we don't think that mentally, socially, and emotionally, he's going to be able to do that. You guys cannot take him." So they went and they fought for a legal guardianship of me. And instead of me going 4 hours away to that boot camp, I went a mile down the street to a boys' home, where my counselor became one of my legal guardians. And she picked me up from that boys' home every day, brought me to school, and took me back to that boys' home. And that just made our relationship grow even more. That kept me in that system where I had all these things in place to make sure that I was going to be good in life.
And at that time, your brother is about 14 and you're 12?
13, 14, 12, 13, yeah.
So right in that middle school tough age anyway for any kid. And your brother's selling drugs. He goes away, comes back right to what he did. You have the fortune of these people stepping in and fighting for you, when it would have been easier for them to say, "Darrion, see ya. We'll see you when you get back." But they didn't. They really fought for you. And that was like a giant game changer for your life. So then you go to this boys' home, and then what happens? Because there's other people that come in that make a huge difference.
Yes. So I go into this boys' home, and the first day that I get there, I walk in, I got all my gang colors on, my orange shirt, my black pants. I got on my Chucks with my orange shoestrings, just representing my neighborhood. And the first thing they said was, "Take it off." I'm like, "What do you mean?" They were like, "Take that off. We're not going to have that in this place." And it was weird to me, because I've never been in a position where I was really going to let someone that I didn't know tell me what to do. Because even though I respected and I listened to my counselors, everyone else, it took a while for me to get to that point. It was no, like, the first day they tell me, "Darrion, you need to do this." Like, I'm like, "No, you don't tell me what to do. My mom's not even in my life. She don't tell me what to do. So who are you to tell me what I can and can't do? I don't know what I'm going to eat. I don't know what I'm going to sleep. You have no control of my life. I got to figure this out. I'm the adult of my life." That's how I always looked at things. So when I walked in the boys' home and they told me what to do, I'm like, "Man, you got me messed up. I'm not doing anything." And then see, this big black guy walk out, somebody that I could relate to it because he's a black man. He was an authority figure. And it was weird because I had never had a positive black man influencing me. I had black men in my life who were trying to tell me like, Darrion, you should or you shouldn't do this. But when I see with my own eyes that you're continuing to do the stuff that you're telling me not to do, then obviously I'm going to want to do those things because you're telling me not to do it, but why are you continuing doing it? It must be a good reason why you're doing it, so I'm going to continue doing that. So this man, Ken, he walks out, he was like, take the stuff off now. Me being intimidated because you got this big black dude telling me what to do. I'm like, all right, let me go ahead and just take this off because I'm not trying to fight this guy right now. Now, if he was in my neighborhood, I would have fought him because one, I would have had my gang behind me, and two, I would have had a knife or a gun and I wouldn't have been afraid, but I didn't have anything, like nothing. And, you know, the word nothing like really mean it's powerful because it allowed me to shed all of that stuff that I built up that I had, that I needed to be hard and I need to not have empathy. You know, I needed to not love or respect or do anything for anyone. I was able to shed all of that stuff. And it just opened me up to so many more things and so many more people because that big black intimidated tough dude taught me, he was like, Darrion, you see me and you listen to me because you were afraid. And I understand that. I can be intimidating. I can make you afraid, but that's not what it's about. I'm here to show you that one, I can be a positive black male influence in your life. Two, it's okay to be tough, but you have to have an understanding that you need to be respectful and you got to have empathy for people. Because when you do that and you break down these walls, it allows other people to come into your life and help you see what else is out there to make sure that you are more successful. And that completely changed me, like 100%. Because when I started breaking down those walls and just letting more and more people come into my life, and it just opened me up to so many more things, and it just completely changed my mindset. Like since that day when I was in that boys' home, that first day, and I never went back to my neighborhood. And I hate saying that I never went back to my neighborhood because I never went back there to live. I go back and visit, but I think me not ever going back there to live was the best thing that could ever happen to me in my life.
You were completely removed from the neighborhood and the influence.
Yes.
What about your siblings? What happened to them?
So till this day, I still struggle with that. I have a lot of anxiety and depression. Just thinking about that because, I struggle with my faith because I'm always asking God, I'm like, there are all these people in my family. Why would you choose me? Why would you take me out of this situation? But they're back home still struggling. Like 17 years ago when they took me out of that situation, I progressed. They haven't. And I just don't understand because it's like, what is your goal with me? What is your plan? Because there's nothing I can do to change their mindset the way that you helped me change mine. I'm trying to be a good influence. I'm trying to be like inspirational for them. I give them money, but nothing I can say, nothing I can do can get them out of that hole that I feel like they dug themselves into. My senior year in high school, my little brother was murdered. He was 16 years old. My oldest brother, unfortunately, he's still doing the same stuff that he's been doing since 8th grade, selling drugs and stuff. I have a sister. She's doing the best that she can, but, there's a huge lack of resources and opportunities. So, she's just doing the best that she can. My little brother, Patrick, he's actually in federal prison right now for selling drugs. I have another little sister who's actually doing pretty well. And my mom, I think because of all her years of drug addiction and drinking and things like that, that mentally it's really starting to affect her. She's been in and out of hospital a few times just because she's just battling different things that may or may not be there and things like that. And I think from all those drugs, it's really starting to affect her now, unfortunately. But it sucks. It really does suck because I would trade my position with anyone in my family right now because I would never say that I don't care about myself, but I think I just want them to be where I am more than I want to be here right now. And it's just one of those things I've been trying to just deal with.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That is difficult because there's even though you got out, there's a whole lot of things because the reality is very few people do.
Yeah.
And it's hard when it's people that you love.
Yeah.
So after you have the fortune of meeting Ken. Ken comes into your life, and then you move into with a football coach. And that to me is it's so cool because how many people would say, you know what, here's a kid who on paper shouldn't succeed and could steal from us. And we know he's got weapons, and we know he's got family members with who knows what access to. And let's move him into our house. Those are some incredible people. So tell me about them and how that happened.
So while I was in the boys' home, I started playing football in 8th grade. And one of my football coaches had a son that actually played on the team as well. One thing a lot of people don't know about that family was that unfortunately they were not blessed with the ability to have kids. So they adopted 2 kids, both of them from Brazil, 2 or 3 years apart. And Matt, he was my age. If you've seen them, you would just think they were just black kids, but they were from Brazil, and their skin was pretty tan, such as mine. But I started playing football, and unfortunately, because I was in a boys' home, I was not allowed to do a lot of the same things that the football team did, either before or after practice, because legally, the boys' home had to come get me and take me back, and no one had any kind of guardianship of me where I can go off and do other things. There were a lot of times, unfortunately, where the boys' home was late picking me up or late dropping me off. And a lot of those times I was spending time with my football coach. He would be the one waiting with me. So I would be like waiting in the car with him or just talking to him about my situation. And throughout the whole football season, him and I got like closer and closer. After football season ended, he was like, would you ever want to come out and just hang out with us at our house? And I'm like, absolutely. And in the beginning, I was going over and I was hanging out with his son. And then, the more and more I started to go over there and I got closer to them, I wasn't even going over there to hang out with Matt anymore. I just loved being there. I think that was the first time really in my life where I had like a family. I feel like I truly had a family, like a mom, a dad, a sister, a brother, and just that structure, that love, that support that every kid should have from their family. And after spending more and more time with them and, them going to the courts and asking for, little field trips or legal guardianships where I can spend time with them over longer periods of time, it just led to them one day asking, Darrion, do you want to live with us? I'm like, heck yeah. Those are not my exact words, but let's just say, keep it in PG. I said, heck yeah. And from that point on, they so in a lot of my stories, I say that they adopted me, but they really just fostered me. And the reason I use the term adopt, because even though they fostered me, to me, those are my adopted parents. And the reason that we went with the fostering route instead of the adoptive is because logistically, I got a little bit more from the state, which supported me like in college and stuff like that. So as we like went through the paperwork, we were looking at things like if we adopt you, these are the things you lose from the state. If you stay as a foster parent or a foster kid, then you still get these other things, which would be great for you in your future and endeavors. So I'm like, okay, we'll just stick with that. But obviously, you're my mom, you're my dad, this is my sister, this is my brother. I never looked at them as anything other than that.
Did you call them that, mom and dad?
So in the beginning, I just kept calling my football coach. And then I was calling his wife, Miss Kaiser. And it was weird for me because I had never called anyone mom or dad before, ever. Till this day, my own biological mother, I've never called her mom because unfortunately, she's never been a mom to me. My mom to me has always been like either a close friend or like an aunt or a cousin. Like I'll call my mom by her nickname, which everyone in our family in our neighborhood calls her, which is Tootie. So it was just so weird for me to hear kids say, mom or dad. I'm just like, that's like corny. That's weird. It's like something you see on TV because I wasn't used to that. So I'll never forget the first time. So I'll call my dad coach for a while. But the first time I called my mom was I was in a room talking with Matt, and we were trying to go to the mall. He was like, Darrion, man, I overheard mom saying that if you ever called her mom, she'd be so happy. And we want to go to the mall. So if you go call her mom, I know she'll be happy and she'll take us to the mall. So the first time I called her mom, I have to be honest, it wasn't genuine. It was just like, I'm trying to go to the mall and like see these girls and have a good time. So I'm like, hey, mom. And she was so excited. She took us to the mall.
Oh, that's fantastic. Such a teenager move.
I know, but I'm so glad I did it that way because then the more and more I started to call her mom, it was just so natural. It was like, this is my mom. Like, it was just that's mom. You know what I mean? So the first time was not genuine and not from the heart. But then on after that, it was like strictly like, this is my mom. Like, this is not Mrs. Kaiser. This is not Sherry Kaiser. This is my mom. And then soon after that, I was calling my dad as well.
So I'm interested in how your background helps you be a better teacher.
Everything that I do is based off of my past experiences and some of the things I've learned, both good and bad. I think the way I teach is by allowing my students to learn from my shortcomings. Knowing that I didn't have much has really definitely made me appreciate the job that I have. And this is the one thing in my life, more than anything I've ever done, being a husband, being a father, being a friend, this is the one thing in life I think I was born to do. It comes so naturally. And I hate saying this, but I honestly feel like I didn't need to go to college to be the teacher that I am right now. It just comes so naturally and so easy. And I just love it. It doesn't matter how bad of a day I'm having or anything like that. When I walk into that school and I see that first kid smiling at me, I'm just like, what was I upset about? Who cares? It doesn't matter. This kid is excited to see me. I'm excited to see them, and I'm going to continue my best to make sure that I keep that smile on their face. And I think knowing where I came from and dealing with a lot of stuff that I had to deal with has definitely allowed me to connect and relate to a lot of stuff that my students or their families might be going through. And I think now that those parents and those students know that, it's allowing them to ask me more questions and come to me about more stuff that they now see that, oh, Mr. DC has gone through this, so maybe he can help me get out of this situation or navigate this situation to the best of my ability.
So one of the things that is such a gift about your background is that you can probably spot these students who need the love, who need the spark of hope, easier than someone who hasn't been there themselves. So
Yes.
for those of us who may encounter kids where it's tempting to judge their shortcomings or look at them with why aren't they doing school or whatever it might be, what are some things that we should look for in kids that are signs that they need the extra love and they might need that ride home? Or what are those things that the rest of us could miss?
So, some things are kind of hard for some people, but I would say one, and although they might be kind of completely opposite ends of the totem pole, but they're the same, like kids who are overly confident and then kids who are really not confident at all. Like they don't really talk, they're kind of, shy and they withdraw themselves. I think those are the kids who you can tell that they either are in a situation where they're not being heard at home or they don't feel important or they feel insignificant and they're not getting a lot of the love and support that they need to thrive. And I think a lot of times those kids who are overly doing it or compensating for something they may or may not be getting at home as well. So I think it's, like just really just talking to your kids, getting to know them, because sometimes just asking a kid about their day or their weekend can open the door to a lot more conversation where you can really nail down and figure out why this kid's so amazing or why this kid is struggling in my classroom. And I think that's one of those things that I wish every administrator can hear me right now. When you're hiring someone, don't just try to hire a teacher based off their classroom experience. Because I think that was one thing that Lindbergh almost lost me on. When I first applied for Lindbergh School District, I applied at the middle school. And I wasn't hired because they said I didn't have enough experience in the classroom. I didn't have enough experience at teaching health, which was true. But I had never taught either, so I couldn't build that experience. But I think the thing that set me apart from other people was the experiences that I've had throughout life, which is going to allow me to connect more with these kids. And then I can use it as a bridge to get them motivated and connected and buying into whatever that content that I'm doing in my class. There's a lot of times these kids go to school every day and they're just going through the motions because they're not connected to that teacher or to whatever they're talking about in class. And when I can bring in stuff that I've experienced in my life, stuff that I know that can connect them to what I'm doing in my classroom, that's the thing that's going to matter. Me having classroom experience means absolutely nothing to them or to me, because that's not going to make me build anything in my classroom. That's just like, oh, he knows what he's doing because he's been in the classroom. But when these kids have real life problems and issues and you can't relate to them, then what?
And you use your background as something that you talk about. You wouldn't need to. You could go through your life from here on forward. Well, now you're on the internet, so you probably couldn't. But before, you could have gone out there and talked about, I graduated from college, here's what I'm doing. And you use your background as an asset. And a lot of people use difficult circumstances as they view it as a liability, and they don't talk about it because they're either ashamed or embarrassed or whatever. And the fact that you view it and use it as an asset is what I think is one of the inspiring things about your story, because you are, here's who I am, here's what I came from, here's how I overcame. Oh, and by the way, I have a responsibility to use the gifts that I have to help other people.
Amen.
we all need to do that, right? So when you are with these kids, I got to tell you, I was watching you with the kids and YouTube doing, the whip and the nay and all the things. And I went to PE in elementary school and I hated it. I mean, the burpees and the push-ups and the calisthenics, and the boys were always stronger. I never connected exercise and using your body as a child to all the things that you learn from it that I know now as an adult. And you talk to the kids about that and you make it so fun. Did you learn that from your background? Is that something that you just have feedback from the kids and you're doing it? How did you get to this place where you are so passionate about kids and exercise?
I think for me, when I was early in education, especially when I went out to that suburban school, because I struggle with ADD, ADHD, dyslexia, and all these other learning disabilities, outside of my specials, art, PE, and music, I was awful. Those were the three things that I thrived in. And I think PE especially, I was so good at it and I loved it so much and I look forward to it every day. It was my happy place. PE was sometimes the reason why I woke up in the morning. PE was the reason why I got through those doors. PE helped me get through those doors. It was my happy place. And I think one of the best things that my PE teachers could have taught me was that they said, DC or Darrion, we know that you love PE. I'm glad that you love PE, but you need to understand that these other classes, they're just as important as PE. And even though you might not love them just as much as you do PE, you need to have a respect and understanding about why all of us are connected and why you need all of us to grow as a person. And I think knowing that now and teaching the way I do, I try to use every aspect of life, any other class that I can, and implement that in my class to try to get a different kid to buy in, because I know who those kids are who love PE and want to do anything that I do for them. Like they're going to do anything I do anything I say. But those kids who don't love PE, those kids who hate exercising, me finding things that they can connect with, implementing that into my program and helping them see that, oh my God, this is connected. I do actually like this. I do have benefits from this. I mean, that's where it all comes from the PE teachers that I had before me.
So as your students are aging and they're getting older and you're seeing them do things, what kind of impact are you having on their lives? And what are they telling you? Or are they still too little?
No, they are not actually. I think one of the greatest things that I've seen through this process, like all this stuff happening to me right now, is that when I have kids come back and they get interviewed and I hear them talk, like when they're in the room talking, I leave the room because I don't want to embarrass them. I want them to feel like weird. But when I go back and I look at those interviews and I hear the things that they said, how Mr. DC like really went out of his way to connect with me and do this and do that, like it just makes me feel so good, because like I said, when I'm doing these things, I'm not doing them because I'm like, oh, I got to do this because that's what teachers do. I do this because I feel like that's normal. Like I didn't have that stuff growing up. So I feel like this is what I need to make sure that I'm doing in this classroom, because I didn't have that. And this should be normal for kids. Also, one of the coolest stories I can tell you is that I had a student in my class that had a lot of behaviors. There was a lot of times I had to call his mom because of just the way he was acting in my classroom. And I think because I had to discipline him so much, I felt like that this kid didn't like me. But he went off and he went to middle school. And there was a situation where some kids was bullying another kid and they were all friends, but he didn't like how those kids were bullying this kid. So instead of going to his principal or his teachers or anything like that, he asked his mom if he can contact me. This kid that I used to always discipline, like respected me enough, knew how much that I cared about him, and knew how I felt about being respectful, being responsible, honest, and caring towards others. He knew those values that I instilled in him, and he was showing those, and he reached back out to me instead of teachers right there in front of him because he trusted me. That meant so much to me, because I would have never thought that the kid that I always had to discipline actually, under all of that stuff, really cared and respected me as much as he showed me when he reached out to me about a situation that was going on in school.
That's awesome. Really cool. So your son, how old is he?
He is 3 going on 25.
So he's 3 and he is growing up in a very different environment than you grow up. And I don't know if you take him to the neighborhood where you grew up or not. He's probably too little, but at some point he'll know, and he'll be able to Google and read about you, and he won't have all that struggle to overcome And his dad will just be this celebrated teacher who's on Good Morning American and People Magazine and all the things. How do you get some of those lessons that you learned as a struggling child into a kid who you don't ever want to have those struggles?
So that is really, really tough for me right now. And I'm doing my best to balance that. Luckily, I have a really good support system with my wife. My wife grew up completely opposite of me. I mean, she pretty much had everything. She didn't have to worry about nothing. College, school, money, whatever. Like, she was exposed to a lot of stuff at a young age, and it really like allowed her to be a great person. Me, on the other hand, obviously, I didn't have any of those things. So when I'm parenting, when I'm trying to be a dad and I'm spoiling Dawson, one side of me is like, okay, Darrion, you got to really teach him how to appreciate things and just like understand things, respect things. You can't just keep spoiling him. But then the other side of me is like, I just want him to, I'm almost living through him because I want him to experience the stuff that I didn't have. So one day we went to the store and my son was like, I like that. I'm like, okay, let's buy it. And my wife's like, babe, we got to teach him how to, appreciate things, and we can't just keep giving him stuff. And I'm like, well, I didn't have anything. I never was able to just point something out and get it. So I just want to give it to him. So I'm just trying to find that fine line right now at this age that he is. He doesn't really understand, but as he does get older, I am going to like really explain to him my story and try to teach him like, dude, you got to really appreciate things because I didn't come from a situation where I was able to be spoiled or have anything. And I think taking him back to my old neighborhood and just showing him some of those things is going to be really important. Right now, I don't take him back as much. And it's really tough because as of right now, I'm like one of the only Black people that he sees on a daily basis because we live in the suburbs. His mom's white, his grandparents are white, all his friends in this community is white. So other than myself and maybe one of my cousins who I hang out with, or my stepbrother who I hang out with, he doesn't really see other African-American people or men. And I think that's another thing that I'm struggling with because I want to take him to the cities to see his roots and meet his family. But there's a lot of stuff going on in the city that I don't agree with. I don't ever want him to look at those things as normal because unfortunately, because those other siblings and family members, they were conditioned to thinking that stuff was normal. They're still doing those things. And I think it's caused them not to progress as much as I know they could have in life.
Your story is something that you didn't go down this path of teaching, and no one does. And God bless all the teachers out there. Nobody goes into that line of work and says, you know what, I would like to be known for my work. I would like to be a national news celebrity. And you had your 15 minutes and maybe continuing on because of this Teacher of the Year award, which you didn't ask for, someone nominated you for, and it gave you this platform. And then you openly have shared your story. What has that been like for you? Someone who never wanted it. You weren't out there trying to get TikTok famous. This just sort of happened to you from the most unlikely background.
I think that goes to show people the power of authenticity. I think growing up, I was always trying to be somebody that I wasn't. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be a rapper. Or in order for people to know me or to see me, to be rich and be happy, that I have to be a football player or I have to be this or I have to be that. And even, before going to college, while in college, I'm trying to be a rapper. Christy, I thought I was going to be a rapper, girl. And I'm, trying to, blow up and put stuff on the internet. I'm like, man, this is not going anywhere. Let me focus on my studies. But it's crazy that once I kind of, got into being a teacher and just started just being me and stopped trying to be something that other people want me to be or being something that I thought that I had to be, all this other amazing stuff happened. And it just goes to show if you just really commit to being yourself, getting to know yourself and being the best person that you can be, there's so many amazing things that can come out of that. And for me, I mean, this is still unbelievable.
Do your students, do your other teachers, other parents, do they treat you different now?
So they try, Mr. DC, you're famous. And I always tell them like, no, I'm not famous. I'm just your PE teacher. And it's even weird. Like I have this huge banner that says Darrion Cockrell, Missouri Teacher of the Year. And it took me 4 months to put that up because I wasn't embarrassed about it, but I don't ever want people to think like, oh, he's too cool or he's trying to, do this or do that. Now he's changed because I'm just me. You see me differently because you see all this stuff on social media and the internet, but I'm still your silly PE teacher.
Still making the videos, still putting them out there.
Yeah.
So to wrap this up, and I hate to because I could keep talking to, your story is inspiring and motivating, and I hope that more people in your neighborhood can look to you as something to aspire to. And the kids can see you in your classroom who may be having hard times and see something to aspire to. Because if it happened to you, as you said, it can happen to anybody, but you were open to it. I'm excited to see all the ways that your story will touch other people and how the students will go off and, you're going to make generational change, which is what all teachers do. You just have a public stage for it. So the last question, is there a quote or song that has helped motivate you as you've flipped your script?
Yes. So there's a movie that came out in 1993, and the name of this famous movie, was Sister Act 2, Back in the Habit.
Yes.
And,
are you going to rap? Are you going to sing for us right now?
I am not. I am not. But in that movie, she was really having a hard time of like engaging with the kids, getting them to buy into whatever she was talking about, or just getting any kind of respect from them. And when it started to change was when she was teaching them this phrase, and she kept saying over and over, and they had to repeat it. If you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you got to wake up and pay attention. And she kept saying it, and she kept repeating it. And then one of the kids was like, can we switch it up a little bit? And they sang it. And I think when they sang it, they felt it more, and then she felt it more from them. But there was still one kid who was like against everyone. And she was like, she didn't want to buy in, and she left. But as she was leaving, and they were showing her walk out of the room, you heard Whoopi Goldberg in the background saying, if you want to be somebody, if you want to go somewhere, you got to wake up and pay attention, because you guys are going to be in the real world. And in the real world, they don't care about how cool you think you are or who you're hanging out with, because you need an education. And without that, you're nothing. And I think that hit so hard on me, because education has been the number one source of my love, my happiness, and everything that's come to me great in my life.
That is an advertisement for schools and higher education and lower education and all the education. And kids, stay in school. It can change your life. Thank you for sharing your story. I am thrilled that we had the time. And again, I just can't wait to see what happens to you and your students.
Well, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And just, give me this platform where I can hopefully continue to inspire people, and just know that no matter what's going on in your life, when things get tough, just keep moving forward. You got this.
Fantastic. So many things that Darrion said are perfect and applicable to all of us, but to think about, be the best you, figure out who you are and really lean into it. Know that wherever you came from, whatever happened in your past is an asset, to be vulnerable, to be authentic, and most of all, look around you, be a spark of hope for someone else. My hope is Darrion's story empowers you to believe you're capable of more than you think, to discover motivation, to uncover inspiration, and to find the strength to turn the page.
Thank you for listening to Flip Your Script, hosted by Christy Peel and produced by Media Minefield. If you like our message, please be sure to give us a 5-star rating and subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts. You can also check out flipyourscriptpodcast.com for pictures, resources mentioned in the show, and information about our other great episodes.